Hi, this is Mark Frank with climate change news from the week of January 18th to the 24th. According to Bloomberg News, methane emissions fell by 10% in 2020 based on a 2019 comparison. Now, an understanding that greenhouse gas emissions are CO2 as the worst and methane as the second still requires methane emissions to be at drastically reduced rate. However, that is a good start. Agriculture still accounts for the largest output of methane. However, these reductions can be drastically increased if we also cap disused wells. France's central bank announced that it would withdraw its financial portfolio of oil and coal by 2024 by first lowering its investment standards to 10% of any company that is investing in coal and oil, and then to 2%, eventually down to 0% by 2024. The World Economic Forum in Davos released an article titled ominously, "Climate Change Will Be Sudden and Cataclysmic. We Need to Act Fast." Their harboring of doom is followed with a breakdown of negative feedback loops that is a pretty good read and depicts climate catastrophe on an imminent basis that isn't often reported in the news. The one limitation of the article is that it continues the misinformation of a tipping point where climate change is actually a massive event rather than an ongoing crisis. The article is definitely worth a read, and I will put the link in the description. The Canadian federal government announced funding for a non-profit resource hub for the prairie provinces all about climate change. They're calling it Climate West, and with a $1.95 million contribution, not much else was actually specified. In positive news out of America, President Biden signed multiple executive orders aimed at reversing climate devastation. Most notable was the re-entry to the Paris Climate Accord, a halt of the oil and gas expansion in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and the denying of the permit to the Keystone XL pipeline. Now, my entire news report the following day was nothing but jubilation and speculation about these Biden gestures. However, most of them didn't actually come with plans. They were only executive orders halting things that had been done in the previous administration. A full link to Biden's climate change orders is in the bio for the Scientific America article. One thing Biden has yet to address is climate change education reform. Now, former top officials in the US are calling on Biden to actually include language around climate change in the US curriculum, and I was shocked to find out that there is no climate change curriculum in the US public schools to date. Students and former education secretaries have written an open letter to Biden calling for him to incorporate climate change language for all public schools. Ho-Seng Lee, chair of the IPCC, spoke this week on the need for political action and political will to regard climate change as an imminent threat, focusing on the mismanagement and havoc caused by the pandemic as a learning curve for things yet to come for climate change devastation. Lee laid out several ways leaders could rise from the pandemic through a green recovery plan and stressed climate pledges needed to come now in order to create a sustainable future. Last Sunday, the 17th, one person was arrested for disrupting construction for the Trans Mountain Terminus in Burnaby, British Columbia. The 79-year-old overstepped what the protesters were allowed to do by violating the court's non-obstruct, impede, or otherwise prevent access to the site order. CBC and Global News reported that the 79-year-old got in the way of construction workers, but beyond that, not much more was reported. And lastly, in positive news, the youth suing the Ontario government won a legal battle against the government, which was trying to throw out their challenge to Ontario's climate change policies. The youth have been suing the provincial government for over a year, claiming the emissions reduction targets will still cause widespread illness and death. This has been This Week in Climate News, brought to you by Mark Frank. For more, tune in next week.